Understand that to listen to this podcast is not to cross the line and find yourself in an enemy land. No, to continue on is to be made aware that you have lived your entire life in an enemy land. An unseen war rages all about you, and it is my task to open your eyes to it. To see this war is to join it. Everyone can fight, but not everyone will. Surrender is an option, and one taken by many. But maybe you are better than that. Stronger. Braver. So I have to ask, will you fight? This is the Endless Elsewhere podcast, Chapter 11, The Dark Halo. What you just heard was an excerpt from a book, slightly reworked as always for this podcast. This podcast, like this book, is the third in a trilogy, what is often the final installment of a story. Forgive me, listener, but recent events make me look to the future with uncertainty. I suppose I should bring you up to speed, shouldn't I? And by that, I don't mean a recap of the previous season. We did one of those already. No, I'm talking about something that happened much more recently. But first, some context. After last year's Halloween special, we were on top of the world. Our crossover event with the True Believers had introduced our little podcast to a far larger audience than we could have ever reached on our own. Danny had told us to prepare ourselves for fame, but neither Joseph nor I had believed him. We should have. The Endless Elsewhere had a meteoric rise in popularity, whereas the podcast had become an increasingly national and even global hit. Closer to home, my radio show, Circle City Supernatural, had been on its own sharp ascent here locally after the events of Season 2. Things were looking pretty good for us all around, so you can imagine my surprise when Sylvia dropped the following bomb on me.
Lindsay.
Why do you have the field recorder?
I thought you want this news on the record.
What news? Sylvia, what's wrong?
We're out. More than just canceled. The station's been sold. The new owners plan to completely reformat. They're even changing the call letters.
Sylvia, what are you talking about?
It's going to be all easy listening from now on. So no need for a late night paranormal talk show.
Where are you getting this from?
I just got off the phone with the higher ups.
I'll talk to them. This must be a mistake.
I tried. Believe me, I tried. It's a done deal, Lindsay.
How could they just sell the station?
Sounds like the owners were offered more than it's worth. A lot more. Like, a suspicious amount more.
Who bought us?
Something called Rampart Media.
Rampart Media? I've never heard of them.
That makes two of us. I looked online, but I couldn't find much beyond a generic website.
I can't believe this. It doesn't make any sense. We were doing so well. The best we've ever done.
And I think that's why this happened.
You think this is them? That Rampart Media is actually our enemies?
Do you doubt it? It was different when your voice was just reaching a handful of people, Lindsay. But now, it's all over the world. And that's a problem for them. They know we use the station for the podcast, so they're taking it away.
Then they're as wrong as we were about us needing this place. We can set up somewhere else. We could build a recording booth at Joseph's bank. He's got the room for it. We can keep at least the podcast going. They have to know that.
I'm sure they do. Maybe this is a warning. A final warning to walk away?
Is that what you want to do, Sylvia? You want to walk away?
I just broke the news to Gary. He's actually excited about this. He's going to take an early retirement and...
Sylvia.
We were kidding ourselves to think they'd just let us go after what we've done to expose them.
So you're out?
Today it's our jobs. Tomorrow it's everything else. How far do you plan to take this, Lindsay? Despite the name of this podcast, there's definitely an end out there, and we might be coming up on it.
When do we have to be out of here?
Not clear on that. Any day now. Management said to carry on normally and not to speak of the buyout. They'll make a formal announcement later. Oh, and they also asked that we no longer mention the podcast on air.
I bet they did. Sylvia, I understand if you want to be done, but I'm not. I've come too far to stop now, but I won't ask you to do the same.
I'm still in, Lindsay.
Really?
Why do you think I have the field recorder, dummy?
Atta girl. Hey, we're gonna get through this. Let them take the show from us. We still have the podcast. It's getting more popular by the day. The sponsors will start rolling in soon. Maybe this is actually for the best. Now we can finally give the Endless Elsewhere our full attention.
Sure, Lindsay. But until then, we still have this job to do. You're on the air in 20.
Loss is difficult to process, even when it's for a job. You have the initial shock and disbelief when it's taken from you, but then your brain scrambles to reframe the situation as something positive, like you just heard me doing. But as the reality sinks in, so does the regret. It was hard doing the show that night, knowing it could very well be my last. Actually, it was the hardest show that I've ever had to do. I was getting emotional, certainly, but I kept my voice from trembling on mic. The truth was, I loved Circle City Supernatural. I didn't want it to go away, even if it meant shifting all of my focus to this podcast. I had fought for CCS. Literal blood, sweat, and tears had been shed to keep it going. We'd come close to cancellation before, but we had managed to pull out of the nosedive before hitting the ground. Not this time, though. This time, we'd crash and burn, and there wasn't a thing I could do about it. Brooding over my helplessness, my despair turned to anger. Bitter as I was feeling, I determined to flout my boss's mandate and announce the end of Circle City Supernatural live on the air. This show had been going for decades. It was an institution at this point. I could stir up a public outcry from our loyal listeners, get them to protest, to boycott the new station. As soon as we were done with the calls that night, I could tell everyone everything. Let the higher-ups fire me. I was on my way out anyway. CCS would not go quietly into the night. I had firmly decided to do this, but, well, something happened that derailed my plan, distracted me from it. I think you'll understand why. Before I played the audio from that night, though, there are some things probably worth mentioning first. With the unprecedented rise in my show's popularity, we were able to book more guests. We largely became an interview program where I would speak with what were mostly researchers and investigators of the paranormal. Also, because of how seasons 1 and 2 of this podcast had ended, there were neither monstrous nor alien entities left in town to be witnessed, and therefore discussed on air. However, the call-in portion was the mainstay of the show, so we needed a way to keep it going. It was Sylvia who had the winning idea. She'd brought a sizable fishbowl to the station, and the pair of us spent a couple of hours filling it with scraps of paper, each one with a different topic of the supernatural scribbled on it. So, when it was time to go to the phones each night, she'd select a subject at random, and I'd announce it on the air. Then people would phone in to discuss whatever my producer had selected. That night's topic was the Bermuda Triangle.
It's aliens, underwater aliens. They got bases down there on the seafloor. Take whole boats and everyone aboard. Pull them down for probing and whatnot.
It's spirits. Underwater spirits. You know that's where the island of Atlantis sank, right? That whole part of the ocean is haunted. Ghosts come up, see, and drag the ships down into the abyss, making everyone aboard join them down there in the watery depths.
It's neither aliens nor spirits. It's purely environmental. Most every tropical storm in the Atlantic passes through the area of the so-called Bermuda Triangle. The Gulf Stream is also responsible for sudden and violent changes in the weather. So,
You seem very sure of all this. You sound like
an expert? That's because I am. I have a master's in atmospheric science and work for an institute of meteorology that I'm not going to name, but it's the biggest one in the nation.
Well, it certainly sounds like you have the bona fides. Thank you for the information.
That's not why I called your show.
Oh?
I called with a real mystery.
Could we get your name, please, before going on?
I'm Fran. Francesca, really, but my dad always said that was too long to say, so just Fran.
Okay, well, you've solved the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle with apparent ease. So, what is it that actually baffles you, Fran?
We heard your show from the road tonight. The thing we're after, well, it sounds like your cup of tea.
You said we. Are you traveling with someone?
My team, yes. We're storm chasers. We're the people you see driving the wrong direction during a tornado.
Oh, that's exciting. Dangerous too, I bet.
It takes a certain amount of crazy to do this kind of work, yeah. And there's plenty of it in this group. Maybe more now than ever.
How many are with you?
There's 4 of us here in the Interceptor.
Interceptor?
It's our pursuit vehicle. Imagine an old SUV that's been reinforced all over with polycarbonate armor. We look like a tank and are basically bulletproof. You pretty much have to be when you're driving into wind speeds of in excess of 200 miles per hour.
I imagine. So, Fran, you said you were after something.
4 days ago, we were tracking a pretty severe storm system, a supercell, to see if it would produce any tornadic conditions.
And did it?
I don't actually know. The storm moved on without us. Gabby, our radar tech, had spotted something weird, so we just hung back to check it out. As the larger system shifted southeast, a single storm cloud stayed behind, like it had been traveling with a supercell, but then just stopped, intentionally. This little nimbus was behaving rather strangely.
Sorry, Fran, nimbus?
That's just our team's shorthand for cumulonimbus. It just means storm cloud.
I see.
Then this nimbus did something even more unusual. It started moving again, but in the wrong direction.
Wrong direction?
It started to go back the way it had come, against the jet stream. I don't know how versed you are in meteorology, but the jet streams flow from west to east, pushing storms in that direction. So we followed it. Our team thought we were documenting some fluke of nature, but it wasn't nature. It wasn't at all natural.
It was supernatural, and that's why we're talking.
Yeah, our cameraman, Darren, was the first to see it. He'd zoomed in on the storm as we sped up to keep pace with it. In the clouds, he saw something that couldn't have been there. You have to understand, we'd been on the road for days, and none of us had slept much. So I thought it was, just his eyes. But then the rest of us saw it. And unless we're sharing the same hallucination, like some kind of mass hysteria, we're all seeing the same thing. The same impossible thing.
What was it?
It was I guess I'll just say it. It was a gigantic snake coiling around in the blackened clouds. It would surface here and there, giving us only glimpses. The thing was definitely there, I swear. I know how it sounds, and I know you don't believe me, but it's real.
Oh, I believe you, Fran.
You do? No, you don't. You're just saying that. How could you believe it? I barely believe it.
Fran, what if I was to say that you are not the first person to call this show with such a sighting? And what's more, what if I told you that I've seen this thing myself? Would you believe me?
What? How is that? When did you see it? Do you know what it is?
No one knows what it is, but we know why it was here and why it left. You don't need to worry about it. The thing is going back to where it belongs. I know that sounds ludicrous, but you're just gonna have to trust me.
Wait, you said it left here?
A while back, yes. But now it's returning to...
No. We tracked it here.
I'm sorry? You said you heard my show from the road.
Yeah, when we arrived in Circle City, we found this thing back in Pennsylvania. My team and I followed the storm cell from there. We've been all the way across Ohio, and earlier tonight crossed the Indiana border. We tracked it to the outskirts of Circle City.
You tracked the storm here?
That's what I said. We've been trying to collect as much data as we can on this, whatever this is, mostly to prove to everyone that we're not insane. But even with the footage and readings that we have, I don't think anyone is going to believe it, especially after what we saw about an hour ago.
What'd you see?
We were almost in Circle City when the radar showed the cell slowing down. The radar was all we had to keep track of it in the dark. The storm eventually stopped completely over this abandoned trailer park. That's how Bill described it. He's our driver and navigator. Once he'd parked the Interceptor, he grabbed his night vision scope to see what he could. He startled, jerking back in his seat and gasping, scared all of us with that. We asked him what he'd seen, but he couldn't speak. He just passed the scope along for us to look for ourselves. By the time it got to me in the back seat, well, there were 6 of them now.
6 of what, Fran?
Things that don't exist. Things as impossible and terrifying as a giant snake slithering around inside of a storm cloud. These creatures crawled out of hiding and assembled and started forward together. And when they did, Gabby said the storm was moving again too. It was almost like they were waiting for the storm. Now, they were, flocking together like it was some kind of a...
migration.
Yeah, whatever these things are, they are all heading into Circle City as we speak.
This is very important, Fran. Where exactly are they right now?
I don't know. My team and I turned back after that. We're done. We're going home. But I felt like I should warn someone about this. Sorry I couldn't do more. Good luck, Circle City.
We took an unscheduled commercial break after that. I grabbed the field recorder and, with Sylvia following close behind, stepped outside the radio station. We had to see for ourselves.
Lindsay, what's happening?
They're coming back. This was the type of call that once defined Circle City Supernatural, but we had not received one in some time, and for very good reason. In the absence of Clarence Grindle, all of his minions had departed Circle City, migrating slowly back to the land of phantoms. But Fran's call clearly described a reversal of this migration. At least some of them had turned back, and the only possible reason for their return was... I couldn't even bring myself to say it aloud. I had to wait until the next morning, when I went to see Joseph at the bank, to hear someone put into words what I dared not.
He's out. Grindle is free of the gin jar.
We can't know that. Even if that was true, how?
I don't know.
The Unclosing Eye said their plan was to put the gin jar into the repository. Do you think they actually did?
And we can't exactly call to ask, can we? The transceiver was our only link to them.
Maybe we shouldn't have destroyed it after talking to Hardesty last season.
We couldn't risk someone using the transceiver to track him down.
Should we just go to the old church and have a look for ourselves? Joseph, what is it?
Something your caller said.
What?
Fran said Nimbus was her team's nickname for storm clouds.
Yeah, she said it was short for cumulonimbus.
Nimbus is also a word of its own. You ever see those old paintings of saintly figures with a glowing aura around their head? That's a nimbus. It's like a halo.
So this storm cloud is what? Grindle's dark halo?
That crowns him wherever he goes.
The pair of us loaded into Joseph's old truck and headed off. Since we were on our way to church, this is probably a good time for me to make a confession, and I'm only divulging this now as it no longer matters. I lied to you in Season 1, listener. Well, I didn't so much as lie as I distorted the truth. So, yeah, a lie. At the request of the Unclosing Eye Detective Agency, we did not divulge the true location of that church in whose basement stood the repository. I mentioned that it was downtown, when in actuality it was out on the edge of the city. I agreed to this in an effort to conceal the place from not only Grindle and the Cabal, but also from, well, you, whoever you are. Surrendering too much information to the public is a constant risk we run with this podcast. Pretty much anyone can take what they learn from this show and act on it, very possibly to the detriment of us all. Joseph and I found ourselves in a similar predicament last season when we altered parts of the recordings to keep hidden the Pendergast estate. But at least then I was upfront about it. So here I am trying to right that wrong. Hopefully you understand, listener. I honestly hate to mislead you. Not only do I have an intolerance for deception, but this podcast is still largely dismissed as a hoax by many, or merely embraced as fictional storytelling by others, so falsehood of any kind greatly damages our credibility. But again, I had decided that it was necessary in this situation. As was explained to us in Season 1, the repository imprisoned cursed artifacts, which now included the gin jar in the spirit of Clarence Grindle. Its location was a secret I felt worth keeping. Even the brief word picture I provided of the building was fabricated. The only part of that description to prove truthful was the advanced age of the church and the cellar doors that were around back. It was to these that Joseph and I went after several minutes of unanswered knocking at the front entrance. There was one other vehicle in the parking lot, so we assumed that the pastor or a janitor or someone was there, but the place seemed to be empty. Why aren't these locked? They should be locked, right? Keith had a key last time.
Picked, maybe. Look at the scratches there around the keyhole.
I don't like this. Beneath the cellar doors was a short staircase. When last we were here, a ramp had been placed over it to accommodate Hardesty's rolling robotic body. The ramp remained, surprisingly, so once again we sidled down this into the darkened basement, While I was previously false about the church overhead, my Season 1 descriptions of the basement as well as the repository itself were entirely accurate. The windows down here had been blacked out, but a sole shaft of recessed lamplight in the ceiling made the repository glow among the surrounding gloom. The stark white cabinet resembled a radiant monolith standing tall and rigid at the center of an abyss. The overhead light, plus those shining inside the repository, exaggerated the illumination just as it had before. However, one thing was different now. The cabinet door, with its opaque glass painted in a smattering of blood-red crosses, hung slightly ajar. A shaft of light poured through the crack and lay slanted on the floor where Joseph and I beheld in horror the shattered debris of the gin jar.
No, no, no.
I'm not seeing this.
Yes, you are.
A familiar voice sounded from inside the cabinet. Joseph took hold of the knob and pulled the door wide. There, among all the other cursed artifacts, hung the dummy, still in his little makeshift gibbet.
Hey, it's you guys again.
You know, after everything we've seen, you'd think there wouldn't be anything left that could still creep me out. But this thing still gets me.
That was a hurtful comment. I have feelings too, you know.
What happened here, creature?
I tell you what, Stretch. You get me out of this cage, and I'll spill the beans.
How about I carry you upstairs and dunk you in the baptismal a few times? I feel like that'll get you talking. Lindsay, what do you think?
He does look like he needs a bath.
Okay, I'll tell you. Somebody took the gin jar out and smashed it.
Who?
I don't know.
Okay, let's give baby his bath.
I really don't know. I swear. Ask Keith.
Keith?
Looks like Clarence Grindle has himself a brand new host.
Joseph and I looked to one another, surprised, then went around either side of the cabinet to see Keith Sorrels coming toward us. The private detective had just emerged from that back room in which we'd first met Hardesty, who, as it turns out, was also present with Keith. We just didn't realize it. Not at first. Keith was pushing a pram, one of those antique baby strollers. Before we could ask about it, though, from inside we heard,
Guten Tag, mein Freunde.
Hardesty?
Keith stepped forward and wheeled the pram around. He pulled away the blanket he draped over the canopy, which he then folded back so that we could see inside of the stroller. The sight was a ridiculous one. Wrapped in baby blankets was a metallic box with a domed porthole on the front, and beyond the glass, a human brain. A vibrant green glow projected from this bubbled window and from vents along the side of the device. Atop it, a sizable speaker was mounted. To disguise it, and to keep the whole effect going apparently, this had been wrapped in an old-timey baby bonnet. From this speaker, the voice of Hardesty came once again.
It is a delight to be with the pair of you again.
What happened to you?
This is the original, isn't it, Hardesty? The mobile unit you built to house your brain. So where's your new body?
We stashed it back at the office. When we went into hiding, we had to put him back in this old thing. It's just easier to move and keep him hidden, you know?
Big, bulky robots. Subtle, they are not. We learned all about that trying to hide the bard last season. But this baby disguise? Does this actually fool anyone?
Hasn't failed yet. Hey, Fred, do your thing.
Cuckoo, gaga.
See? Spot on.
Okay.
What happened here, Keith? You were supposed to be protecting this place.
Which is kind of hard to do when you have to disappear, Mr. Leck. Remember how your podcast exposed Fred here and drove us even deeper underground? Do you remember?
And where's your pastor friend? He just let somebody break in here?
He didn't let anything happen, okay? Just back off. He called me as soon as he found out, and frankly, if this is anyone's fault, it's yours.
How so?
You know how some people make friends everywhere they go? You two? You're the opposite.
What's that supposed to mean? You said Grindle had found a new host. Who?
Did you see that other car out front?
We did. Is it yours?
No. We stay on foot, hence the stroller here. So I guess you didn't see the bumper sticker on the back either.
We didn't, no.
No, it's real cute. It says, "My other car is a ghost ship."
What?
Ghost ship?
I jimmied the lock and dug around in the glove compartment. Turns out the car is registered to a one Herbert Adler. Sound familiar?
Adler. It does sound... I can't place it, though.
Not surprised. It was a little more than a mention in your Halloween special.
The Alcazar.
No, the first one. I said ghost ship.
It's someone from Melgren, Joseph. The Turnquist Theater. His name was on the marquee, remember? He was like the local folklorist or something.
So why is he here?
He's not. Just the car is.
How do you know?
It was reported stolen more than a year ago. I still have some connections inside the CCPD. They ran the plate for me.
Leonard Dyer.
Bingo. You exposed him as a fraud with that whole lighthouse thing. Best I can figure, he came here to return the favor.
Maybe.
What maybe? That has to be it.
Unless he was trying for something worse.
Worse.
Joseph, what is it?
Maybe in his attempt to expose us as fakes, he learned that our podcast was actually true.
Okay, and?
Keith, you told us that Grindle can only possess a person if given the time and opportunity. Maybe Dyer gave him both. Dyer's own life was over. Everything he'd built was now ruined. Maybe he willingly gave himself over to someone who could better exact revenge, someone who wanted us dead more than even him.
Clarence Grindle. But how'd Dyer find this place?
He was a brilliant engineer who'd already proven the extremes that he could go to. We lied about this location, so he must have conducted a systematic search of every church in Circle City, looking for the one with the repository. And he had plenty of time to do this work. While we were off doing another season of the show and another Halloween special, he was quietly combing through town for the gin jar.
Huh.
What, Lindsay?
I wonder why the Cabal didn't conduct a similar search.
Why would they?
Did you listen to Season 2? Operative 5-Coat made it sound like Grindle was now every bit the Cabal's enemy as he was ours. Seems like they would have wanted to get a hold of the gin jar to secure it for themselves.
That's true, but 5-Coat seemed content enough to have Grindle out of their way. Maybe that's why he didn't bother with a search, or maybe he simply believed, as we did, that the gin jar would be safest in the repository.
Well, it turns out we were all wrong about that.
Where's Carolyn and Ryan?
Downtown. They're performing surveillance on the water tower.
The water tower? Why?
No, Hardesty, don't tell me.
Grindle's escape compounds an already dire situation, Herr Leck. The Cabal have initiated the next phase of their plan. It began with the formation of Heartland Security, but now...
They've disguised the project as a restoration thing, when in actuality they're...
Oh, I'm very aware of what they're doing with the water tower, Sorrels.
So, this is the...
Yeah, we'll go over all this later, for the listeners.
Right. So, you guys have Carolyn and Ryan watching it? To keep tabs on their progress or what?
Nein, Miss Pelfrey und young Ryan are there to guard it.
Guard it from whom?
From... you.
I'm sorry?
Apologies, Herr Leck, but when we last spoke, I failed to convince you that certain events must come to pass as predicted by the Dreamcatcher. Each of these events are a pillar in the Temple of Reality. We cannot afford to lose even one.
You know that I understand what you're trying to do, Hardesty, but you also know that I'm going to keep looking for another way.
There is no recourse.
Yeah, but that's what you guys thought about killing Eric Quintero in order to capture Grindle, remember? And we figured out another solution then, didn't we?
There's no way around it. Not this time. Believe me, guys, if there was, Fred would have figured it out by now.
So you're going along with this, Sorrels. You're going to let the Cabal destroy the city you've spent years protecting. What about Ryan and Carolyn? They on board with this too?
Well, obviously, none of us want what's coming. But Fred's explained this to me about a dozen times now, and while I'll probably never fully get how Grindle's time-traveling ripped reality in two, or how the Dreamcatcher solidifies future events on our timeline, I do believe Fred when he says that we could lose it all if certain things don't happen as they're supposed to. We're weighing thousands of lives against billions here. That much I understand just fine. We're choosing the lesser of two evils here.
I'm not philosophically capable of doing that, and I don't understand how you can be.
Because we don't have the luxury of being idealists here. I feel like I said that to you guys before. Look, it's a numbers game we're playing here. We simply can't save everyone. I'm sorry if that doesn't jive with your philosophy, but that's how wars are won.
We must sacrifice a city to save not only our universe, Herr Leck, but the original from which it branched. The choice is clear. It is as Herr Sorrels says. The truth is in the mathematics.
I guess I just don't have the cold machine intellect to make that kind of decision.
It is not a decision made lightly, Herr Leck.
Yet made nevertheless. I can see that you've convinced Sorrels and the others, but a person would not have come to that conclusion on their own.
A person? Am I not a person, Herr Leck? Do I not have a soul? It was you who made me think it's still possible.
And now I'm starting to wonder.
Before this story is over, Herr Leck, we both will know.
Well, guys, it was nice seeing you again. Lovely time as always.
Here, Lindsay. It's the number to my burner. Keep in touch. We're going to need to work together on this.
Together? Honestly, Keith, I'm not so sure we're even on the same side anymore.
Take it anyway. Please. Just in case you need to reach us, okay?
I found Joseph in the parking lot, standing not beside his own vehicle, but the one from Mallyn. He was leering down at the bumper sticker. I pulled him away and we left the church. He angry drove us back the way we'd come, but then pulled abruptly over when only a few blocks away from the bank. You okay?
We can't let this happen.
We'll do what we can, but Joseph, we have to consider the very real possibility that this time will be different. That there's nothing we can do to stop what's coming.
Lindsay?
I was going to tell you this morning, but we got so caught up in all the... Well...
Lindsay, what is it?
The station has been sold. Probably to a shell corporation of the Cabal. Circle City Supernatural is going dark anytime now. And maybe this podcast with it.
What? No, they can't do that. How is that?
Sylvia thinks this is their final warning to us. I didn't know about the water tower thing until a bit ago, but it all makes so much more sense now. Our enemy is moving forward with their plans, and we're in the way. And what are we supposed to do? Even our own allies are working to this end.
All we've worked and fought for, none of it really mattered, did it? We were never going to beat them, any of them. Grindle, the Cabal, even Leonard Dyer. We haven't actually defeated anyone. I don't understand. We were doing the right thing, weren't we?
It all feels different this time. All of our narrow escapes and hard-won victories. I have this dreading sense that we'll throw everything we have at our enemies and it still won't be enough in the end. In the end. When we first met, you told me that there would never be an end.
To the story, yeah, but the story is so much bigger than any one of us. I've come to think of it as a relay race. The runners are the characters, the baton is the plot. Some of us carry it for a distance, sometimes a very long way, but eventually the baton must be passed off.
Is that what's happening here? Is our part in this story coming to an end?
I really don't know. Maybe.
Whatever is coming. We'll meet it together.
I love you.
I love you. We continued on to the bank, parking in the back alley. Joseph went to unlock the rear door, but stopped cold, seeing that it now hung slightly ajar, not unlike how we'd found the repository. Nor was it unlike the church's cellar doors, in that there were noticeably fresh scratches around the keyhole, signs of it having been picked. Still, there was no way to know for sure that it was... it could have easily been some random burglar, but it wasn't. It was most assuredly Clarence Grindle. How did we know? Joseph's eyes climbed skyward, and mine followed after. There, we both beheld a storm cloud hovering above the bank. It was the dark halo. Joseph scowled, then returned to his truck, lowering the gate and climbing into the bed. He stepped to that crate he always kept there, pulling from it my bastillard and the shield he'd made for me last season. He gave both to me, then went back in for his gauntlets. Once battle-ready, the pair of us quietly entered the bank. But there wasn't a fight waiting for us inside. No, we came in to the very unexpected sound of reading.
Grindle's gaze locked upon the orb, and he smiled, transfixed by what was the greatest treasure in either world, as it was the key that connected them. Peering deeply into the emerald glow of the vessel, Grindle, awestruck, then uttered, "A half-century ago, I charged you with a great quest, Doctor, to recover this and bring it to me. You resisted my will. You even fought it. You tried to keep this for yourself. But it was preordained that you should obey me. You already know that my journey to the past has created this timeline, that you exist in a reality of my making. You should have also realized by now that this is my world, and it bends to my will. I control it. I control you. Everything you have done to keep the orb from me has only worked against you, has it not? Every choice you made, no matter how contrary to my wishes, became part of an infinitely complex path with a foregone destination, here and now. Fate, the fate of my creation, has brought you to this time and space to fulfill the destiny I gave you. Boggling, no?
We stepped cautiously into the bank's old lobby, what was now Joseph's library, and there, in one of the 2 armchairs, sat the man we'd first known as Leonard Dyer, but who was now Clarence Grindle. The stainless steel cabinet that held the unsold copies of the Pendergast trilogy hung open in the back of the room. Grindle had gotten into it and now held the 3rd in that trilogy. Finishing the passage, he looked up at us.
It's very off-putting to read your own words in someone else's story, to hear yourself through their ears. Besides, I'm pretty sure I didn't say half of this.
What are you doing here?
I was rather hoping I could have my property returned to me, but I don't know which of these books opens the secret door to the basement. I assume my painting still hangs in your vault, Mr. Leck.
You and this stupid painting.
It's my only physical connection left to this world, Miss Mallyn. It grounds me, you could say.
How did you find us?
Remember that in Season 1, Grindle had not known where this place was. If he had, he would have come here directly for his painting rather than sending his minions to attack us at the radio station in the hope that we'd lead him back to the bank. But something had changed. He'd somehow been able to track us down.
You're wondering how I've come to be sitting here? Why, the pair of you told me, of course. You told everyone.
Excuse me?
You're good about keeping this place a secret at the start, but I'm afraid the 2 of you got rather sloppy as time went on.
How so?
As soon as I got free, I just had to start catching up on my favorite podcast. Last season, you let some key details slip. You mentioned in one episode that Joseph's bank was near to a park with access to the rail trail. Circle Park, specifically. Then, in another episode, you said that the bank was just down the way from an abandoned theater, what could only be the Roman Civic Theater. Plus, there's your obvious proximity to that diner you like so much.
Remember what I was saying earlier, listener, about making certain details public knowledge in this podcast, and those details coming back to bite us? Well, here's a perfect example.
With those 3 points, I was able to easily triangulate this location, narrowing it to the east side of town. Then it was just a matter of doing the legwork, not unlike how you first tracked down the Circle City Collector, Miss Mallyn, or how that pesky Detective Sorrels did. And that's not to mention the Cabal, who seems to have always known where to find Mr. Leck. Oh, I spotted one of those SUVs outside earlier. They're still keeping an eye on you, it would seem. Not to worry. They didn't see me even as I picked the lock, which I couldn't have done without Leonard Dyer. Honestly, he's the real reason I was able to find this place. He has an expertise for the practical that I always envied in other men. My own talents being more abstract, as you well know. Oh, Leo says sorry, by the way, for all of this.
We learned in Season 1 that when Grindle takes a body, the other personality remains, but is imprisoned in their own mind. Apparently, Grindle has the power to not only make use of their knowledge and skills, but to actually communicate with that other presence.
What is that, Leo? Yes, I'll let them know. He says he regrets what he's done and now understands the horror he's unleashed. Horror? Really, Leo, you're being rude. I need to shut you out now. Goodbye. Okay, it's just the 3 of us again. Now, I have to say, I was very glad to hear the pair of you finally got together last season. I tried to tell you, didn't I? Life is far too short for you mortals to waste time. Oh, do put your weapons away. Clearly, I'm not here to fight.
Yeah, we'll keep our guard up, thanks.
I'm not here for violence, Mr. Leck. Now, granted, I might be had I not listened to Season 2. But, well, things have changed, haven't they?
The Cabal. You know their plans for this city.
Indeed, young lady. So it seems we have a common foe, do we not? I have not come here for war, but to make peace. A truce. No, more than that. I'm proposing an alliance.
Sure.
I'm as much their enemy now as the pair of you. I am neither in their service nor in their control. They will not abide that.
You created the Cabal, Grindle.
Accidentally. A mistake that I must correct.
They're not your only mistake, Grindle.
You speak of my creation of this anomalous timeline, and of Hardesti's theory that I have damaged the very structure of reality with my time traveling. Like I said, I caught up on the podcast. And now, to further complicate the situation, my would-be replacement, my mechanized counterpart, the Dreamcatcher, is threatening to destabilize both timelines if certain events don't blah, blah, blah.
You don't believe Hardesty?
I believe that he believes. When you spoke to him last season, he said a certain catastrophe must come to pass here in Circle City in order to keep the continuities intact.
Is he wrong?
While Hardesty is a genius, he's not been where I have been, and not seen what I have seen. The inner workings of reality are so much more fluid than he realizes.
So there is another way to keep all this from happening.
There's always another way. We can stop the Cabal, Mr. Leck. Together.
Glancing at Joseph, I saw what I was afraid to see on his face. Consideration. It's a trick, Joseph. As if he'd even need us for anything.
Was it not the pair of you who defeated me, who pulled a king off his throne? You have more than proven your worth to a traveler of space and time.
So we help you stop the Cabal. Then what? You go back to turning this place into the land of phantoms? That whole revenge plot you cooked up for Charlie Winston? That's hardly a better outcome for Circle City.
I have abandoned my original intention for this place, Miss Mallyn. I assure you.
Yeah, I don't believe you.
Only a few of my pets have made it back here so far, and I have commanded the rest to continue home.
Why?
Let's call it a show of good faith. As I said, things have changed. I will settle my score with the gravedigger another time. He and I have plenty of it. But the pair of you, like Circle City, well, the sands slip swiftly through the hourglass.
We're not interested, Grindle.
Does she speak for you, Mr. Leck?
I looked again to Joseph, who'd gone very quiet as he does when in deliberation. Grindle was offering what Hardesty could not. Another way. A way to save our home. He must have felt my stare because he then turned to me. We can't do this. It'd be making a deal with the devil.
Devil. Take it from me. You'll always be the villain in someone else's story.
Grindle clapped the book closed and tucked it into the cushion of the armchair.
Mr. Leck understands. Don't you, Mr. Leck? I've seen how popular this show has become. But while there are certainly many who now believe you, this city still thinks you're a fraud. And they always will. After the scandal, you stayed here because you wanted vindication. To prove yourself to Circle City. But you can do even better than that. You can save them. You can save them all.
I don't...
Don't answer now. I've given you much to consider. When you're ready to speak again, you can find me where you did last time. I'll show myself out.
What about your painting?
I will let Mr. Leck return it to me when he is ready.
How do you know it won't be a trick this time?
Because of the look on your partner's face, Miss Mallyn. Good day to you both.
Part of the Dreamcatcher's predictions is that Grindle's painting will be witnessed by someone hanging on the wall of Joseph's vault, far, far into the future, well after the fall of Circle City, and Grindle knew that. So for Joseph to willingly hand it over would be to disrupt a preordained point in time. These events Hardesty described as pillars in the temple of reality. If even one is removed, well, the whole thing could come crashing down. As I mentioned, when he goes deep into thought, Joseph goes really deep. I've learned to let him be when he's like that. So, not long after Grindle made his departure, I made my own, coming here to the station where I'm now recording these narrations. Sylvia and I have decided to do them as we go. Typically, I record the voiceovers after all the events of a season have ended. However, with our imminent eviction from the radio station, it's better that we do them before we get separated from the equipment. This is also why we're cutting each installment together as it's completed. So, if it sounds like this third season was hastily assembled, that's because it was. Our production has never been a flawless one, certainly, but this season may prove to be the most thrown together, and that's unfortunate since this may very well prove to be the last. But I can make you a promise, listener. If our part in this story is, in fact, coming to an end, Joseph and I will make it the best possible ending. The perfect ending. Do good, fight evil, repeat. This is, and will always be, the Endless Elsewhere podcast.
Maybe do a regular one?
What? You didn't like my ad libitum?
It's a little dramatic. Plus, you forgot your name.
I don't know. I think it kind of works. You know, considering everything.
I get it. But we don't know if this will always be a podcast. Do we want to make a promise that we can't keep?
I like it, Sylvia. I want to keep it in.
I'll tell you what. We'll save this one and maybe use it later, but let's do another one for this episode, please.
Fine. You are the producer. You know best.
I have you saying that on record now, just so you know.
Okay, here we go. A regular one this time. Do good. Fight evil. Repeat. I'm Lindsay Mallyn, and this is the Endless Elsewhere podcast. There. Happy?
Hello, everyone. Sylvia here. Sorry for this addendum. I know it's unusual, but there are some things I felt you should know before listening to the rest of the season. The entire thing takes place over a mere 3 days. I've done my best to edit all the recordings into our normal 5-chapter run. For that reason, however, the episodes may be awkward in their pacing at times. A lot happened in a short period of time, and I've tried my best to include it all. I made a promise to get the truth out no matter what. This is me keeping that promise. Thank you.